I must say, having just met Ryan, this sounds like a really good one. So I think you've chosen the right room for this. Will people ever engage with wellbeing, rethinking connection from a hybrid workplace? So Slido should be open. If I can encourage you to put questions on there. We're definitely hoping we've got time to answer a few, but Ryan will be around after if not. So without further ado, over to Ryan.
Cool. Hi everyone. How are we getting on? Nice one. Yeah, we're all doing well, yeah? Getting towards that time of day, isn't it? So we'll work on it, I promise. We've got a bit of time. My name's Ryan Hopkins, and I'm going to grab the clicker. So, my name's Ryan. I'm the Chief Impact Officer at JAAQ. It's a mental health platform. I'll tell you all about that in a second. Strategic Wellbeing Lead at Bupa, best-selling author of 52 Weeks of Wellbeing, a couple of TED Talks, and I bloody love this subject. So, stick your challenges in the slide, though. Let's have a few questions afterwards. The more engagement, the better. And yeah, it's a hybrid special. But we're going to check in quickly. Where are we at? This is some Bupa data with a graph that's trending to the right, as we're used to seeing. What we see on the left-hand side is the increase in mental health claims across the book. So this is what we're seeing, 18.5% a year. So from 22 up to the end of 28, we could be seeing 176% increase in claims. If any of the benefits team here, they're like, yep, difficult conversations with brokers en route, right? But the interesting thing is, where we are right now in 2025 for Bupa, we're only serving 3.94% of all lives with mental health support. But considering that 25% of the UK is currently struggling with their mental health, we've essentially got a delta of 21% still. So we could see this increase another 5-fold to reach the people with support we actually need. On the right-hand side, you've got the average severity. This is essentially the average cost of the claim. Medical inflation sits around 8%, and this is actually outstripping medical inflation, meaning that people are engaging later in pathways. We're flat out, right? You do not got 5 minutes spare this side of Christmas. This is why we're not engaging with these things. We're busier than ever, more connected than ever, but more disconnected than ever at the same time. We're going to get into the paradox of connection in a second. What you see in that the pink line underneath that is actually if we can offset the severity by 5%, that's the average price increase over time. So if we can engage people earlier in their journey, instead of waiting until they need more severe support perhaps, we can offset the average cost of claim and actually then serve more people with the support. So if we can reduce the average cost of claim, we can actually reach in to support the 25% of people who are struggling for a similar price point to what we have now. But we really have to engage earlier in the journey. Well, what does this look like practically? We're going to time travel a bit, right? We're going to flip forward to 2028. We're all using Ethereum, right? Inflation has reached horrible levels. But to have the same level of mental health cover compared to today, a company the size of Bupa UK, with the average salary of Bupa UK, with the current rate of price increase, they'll have to find essentially another 4 mil to cover their people with the same level of mental health support, which is equivalent to about 85 full-time employees. And that's just at the current rate of increase. So claims are trending up to the right. The average cost of claims is trending up to the right. And if we don't think about this differently, this is where we're going to end up. So it's important to frame the problem before we get into the solution, right? I'm not going to keep chucking graph and graph and graph at you. We're actually going to do something about it together and explain a few case studies of how we're addressing this differently. So what we're doing more than ever from a wellbeing perspective, right? A lot of people in this room are doing everything they can. A lot of you get into this space because you want to help people not end up where you did, right? If they do, to know they're not alone. So it's definitely not for lack of effort. We spend about 7.6 billion in the UK on insured benefits. That's risen this year by 825 mil. Do we know if it's working, if it's having an impact on the business? Possibly not. In my previous life as the Future of Wellbeing leader at Deloitte, we did lots of research and we found that 1% to 2% of companies are using organizational data to measure effectiveness of their wellbeing efforts. So relying on subjective opinion, some qualitative feedback, the survey, rather than looking, has this addressed absenteeism? Have we impacted voluntary attrition? Have we offset the average cost of claim? So we're spending more than ever. Why is it so hard to engage? Well, we've got this talk of AI everywhere. You just got to walk around the conference. I don't think there's one stand there that doesn't say it, right? AI is coming for your job, okay. Well, there was a big study in Denmark recently, 100,000 workers across loads of organizations. They found that the use of AI chatbots massively increased organizational efficiency by less than 1%. Right? So that's where we got to do is look over your shoulder if a colleague is using ChatGPT and they're like, How do I use the recipe, the bits of bobs I have in my fridge to make dinner? That's the level of education and understanding that most people have. But the opportunity is there, right? We've got the opportunity to reduce the time it takes to complete tasks. But at an operational, organisational level, we're not quite there yet. We've got hybrid, we've got return to offices, left, right, and rhubarb, right? You've only got to go on LinkedIn for 2 seconds and you'll see X companies demanding people back, probably a few in this room, right? And the rationale for those return to offices are often quite interesting. I don't know if anyone saw Manchester United ordered everyone back. It was really interesting. Jim Ratcliffe, CEO, said he saw that email traffic in his old company was lower on a Friday, Ineos, so he's ordered the people in his new company to come back in on a Friday because emails must be a measure of productivity at Manchester United rather than goals. Right? Sorry, too easy. But this is where we are. We've got those rose-tinted glasses, right? Of a time, does anyone remember when we used to go into the office and we'd frolic away, wouldn't we? We'd lean by the water cooler chatting with colleagues about times past. The good old days, right? If anyone's got a pair of those rose-tinted specs hanging around, I'd like a pair and all. But we're ordering people back in for a better time, perhaps. But that's misunderstanding the fact we spend 300% more time in meetings. According to Microsoft, we're distracted every 2 minutes. Most people, actually a lot of workers now are logging in at 6 a.m. and 40% of them are on emails. Calls after 8 o'clock have increased by 19% year on year. The workday span has elongated, and we're wondering why we're struggling to get done what we essentially could before with less time. Apparently, we spend 57% of our day responding to emails, instant messages, and sitting on calls, talking about the work we're meant to be doing in the 43% of the day. No wonder we're stressed out. But this goes contrary to the fact the OECD shared that the work week is shorter than it's ever been, but it certainly doesn't feel that way, does it? A lot of tired-looking people in this room, like slowly nodding. Don't worry, I got you. We're going to do this together. But this is where we're at. And if you work for a public sector, you get a lovely passive-aggressive note flying across your lap. Sorry I missed you. I hope you're here tomorrow. Lovely. That's a good way to build culture. So are you more productive at home or in the office? What do you reckon? Home? Anyone? Anyone better in the office? It's interesting. A cool piece of research recently, which Jacob Rees-Mogg loved. There's 1850 sample size, so truly reflective of the UK population, of course. It was used as a stick to say that we're all essentially lazy skivers. And they found that working time apparently was 18 minutes less when working from home. And that was it. Anyone who works from home, shame on you, you're just sleeping and taking it easy. Don't mind the fact you saved 2 hours commute to do essentially the same amount of work. I also don't believe this because they actually asked people how productive they thought they were yesterday. How many hours did you work yesterday?
Far too many.
Far too many, of course. You would be like that, you know what I mean? How much work did you get done yesterday? Loads? Could you tell me how much? Of course you couldn't, right? I couldn't tell you what I had for dinner yesterday, let alone how much work I got done. So we're asking people how productive they think they are. Subjective measures are very much just that. They are subjective. And what I found was really interesting as well, that 18 minutes, it's nothing. And I actually see people in the office who take 30 minutes to walk to the coffee machine, chilling out. They call that work, right? At home, the work might be a bit different. So I actually asked someone in my team, I said, could you capture for me the difference between the two? And we set some metrics. That's Max. He's in my team. It's the sword of Damocles in the middle, by the way. It cuts both ways. It gives and it takes. That's what that is. So when we're working from home, the number of in-person interactions, Max spoke with people twice. In the office, 29 times. He's much happier in the office, right? Digital interactions, 3 or 4. He checks Slack a lot more when he's at home. He spent much more time socialising when he's at home. He had no hours commute, and he was interrupted a lot less. To be fair, I do ask him for a lot in the office. He's near me, he's getting work done. But how would you engage Max? Do you engage hybrid people differently? Do you engage people differently regarding their location? Do we think about how the SharePoint is shared, the comms are delivered? It's not easy. It's why I created a little paradox. Who doesn't love a paradox, right? So we're more connected than ever, but I believe we're less connected than ever, right? So I created this. If you're remote and you're connected, you've got really strong boundaries. We know what the psychological contract is here. We're really clear. We've got levels of autonomy and agency where we can get work done in a way that suits us. That's amazing. There's not a huge amount of organizations in this space. Much easier to try and control connection in person, right, with those rose-tinted glasses, to get people back in. If I can see you working, I know you're working. Productivity paranoia. Satya Nadella coined this term, and he found that managers only believe their people are getting it done when they're here in person. If they're at home, they're probably just having a kip. So when we're trying to push people back in, we're in the office, we're connected, we've got a much stronger in-person culture. But then you've got the other side. Proximity doesn't necessarily result in increased connection. A lot of us will head into the office, right? Has anyone got less calls when they go into the office? You have. Some people have. That's amazing. You're in a minority. Normally, people go and sit in, they commute into the office, and they'll sit on a video call opposite someone who's also on that call with someone who else is elsewhere. Right? Aldous Huxley literally could not have dreamt this up better. We come together for heads-up work, for connection, for culture, for coaching, for community. All the C's is often better together. And we think the remote work is often better for the heads-down work, the deep analytical, the admin, and stuff like that. But do we really configure our time that way? Or are we ordering people back in for a mandate 3-4 days? And so when we think about it, we can still have a disconnected workplace, and proximity definitely doesn't equal performance or connection. But then equally, you can have a remote workplace that's not connected at the same time. Often there's a payoff. When we push and increase remote, we increase flexibility, allowing broader talent pools to engage in the workplace that were previously not allowed. But then often we pay it for a little bit with connection. It's much harder to engage a remote workforce who are going on call after call after call. So we really have to think differently about engaging these different groups. There was a really interesting study of S&P organizations who mandated people to come back to the office, expecting a huge uplift in everything. They did see an uplift in something, which is, you know I'm setting you up here, right? Yeah. Colleague dissatisfaction went up. No change in organizational performance. But at least they could see their people taking more time to get a coffee in the office, right? So they must have been more productive because they worked for 18 minutes longer, apparently. So what do? We work with some amazing organizations, actually. Got some in the room. Nice to see you. See you nice. And we're going to speak recently. We launched with Nationwide. It's been absolutely amazing. So I'd like to show you the video for launch. It helps you understand what JAAQ is. You think, what the hell does this have to do with mental health platform and Bupa so far? Well, not much. But I've teed you up for this bit, and then we're going to explain how we can engage people differently when they're at home and when they're remote, and we're going to think through 3 use cases as well. Roll the VT.
Interactive online tool.
JAAQ. Just ask a question.
Revolutionise how we talk about mental health.
And all of a sudden, the grief hit me. And it really hit me like a brick wall. And I had no idea it was coming.
You should never have to feel that bad. And you should never have to feel you need to hide it.
And then, you know, there are moments when you're bringing up kids, when you don't know you made the right decision or not.
Perimenopause is a massive thing. If you're going to seek support and help, you need it then.
Teamwork is crucial. You will never be able to win without your team.
We cannot go through life without experiencing anxiety.
And the psychiatrist says to me, everybody's different.
You've got some great people who've come on and
ask me absolutely anything.
That was pretty cool. JAAQ is about psychoeducation.
Not lying.
Yeah, sorry, stop that again, stop that again.
This is only the start.
That's how it goes, right?
So well spotted.
So, as I said, JAAQ's about psychoeducation, 40,000 answers, 130 topics. We've answered 1.6 million questions across organizations at this point, and I'm very proud to have done so. And we try and think about engagement a little bit differently. Regardless of your physical location, we want to make sure that people can get involved and ask any question, regardless of what they're going through, whether that be about benefits, whether that be about topics, or understanding the people in their business. I'll talk to you about 3 use cases and different ways of thinking about it. We did another piece of research at Deloitte, and we found that 96% of leaders believe they're responsible for the well-being of their team. Makes sense, right? 4% I can't speak to. There's always outliers, right? Hopefully you're not in their team. But we asked that same population, we said, do you exemplify the behaviours that you expect of your team? 30% said they did. So it's very much do as I say, not as I do. I'm going to sit in back-to-back calls, but I expect you to go and take a break. You don't have to work like me. What happens and what we do creates a psychological contract rather than what is said. But why is this important? Well, 26% of leaders actually get involved in the challenges themselves. Again, we've got this amazing thing over here. Go do it. I'm not going to bother. But you please crack on. Why is this important? Well, in my opinion, and actually some research recently, we found that the S&P, found that the perception of well-being is perhaps more important than the initiative itself. And they found that when well-being was the focus of the survey, rather than a supplementary piece or 1 or 2 questions, they found that voluntary attrition for S&P organizations was 1% lower. This could be speaking to the fact that when we believe it's an important thing inside this organization, we can do whatever the hell we need to do to be our best selves. And you already know an apple's better than a packet of crisps, getting off your butt's better than sitting on it, calling a loved one is better than being isolated on calls all day. We know these things. We just need the agency to go and do it. So that's why the perception and seeing people share their stories is so important, because we do what we see rather than what we hear. So we did this at nationwide. So in the first 16 weeks, 16,000 employees asked 50,000 questions on the platform, which for them was amazing. For us, we're incredibly proud of this effort. 10,000 questions were asked directly of the C-suite. You saw a couple of them on that VT just there. It would have taken the C-suite 21% of their entire working time just responding to questions. Right? Actually, if you add the question being asked in there, that's probably double the amount of time to do the same. So what this does, it closes the power difference in the business by having brave leaders sharing whatever it is they've been through. They come and join the organization, whatever it is I'm experiencing. I was bulimic person in my 20s. I never knew another bloke who had it, or another woman, actually. I never saw anyone speaking about it, but now it's more discussed. What we're trying to do is share those experiences so you believe I'm not alone and I know where I can turn for help. So what this has done has been absolutely amazing. And now we're using this platform within the business for L&D efforts, and it's going to be integrated into onboarding journeys. So new people join the business and they can sit down and have a chat with the CPO on the platform and then click through those questions. That really sets the tone for the business and makes you believe whatever it is you're going through, you are absolutely welcome here. Right? And that perception is then set from the offset. It's been awesome. And interestingly, the questions we find for another UK bank we work with are often the simple ones that we neglect. The number one question for NatWest is, what is an EAP on the platform? Often the things we believe are table stakes and are absolutely not understood are not as well understood by the business. So we've got to give them an opportunity to ask those questions in a psychologically safe environment where they don't feel silly asking it to someone else, their team, a manager. And what we do as well, we lean into some really, really difficult subjects. So for another client, these were the top topics that we found on the platform. A quarter of the UK feel they're not able to deal with their anxiety. This was the top asked question on the platform. This has gave them additional understanding of the things they need to lean into regardless of physical location. Secondly, they found that menopause was second. They were quite surprised by this, and they've actually now lent back into that benefit to make sure that they're serving people of a menopausal age or approaching, to make sure they have the support they need to be happy, healthy, and hopefully stay at work, and or know where the resources are where they can get themselves support. And then lastly, addiction. This is the one that's really surprising. We see this for a lot of clients. This is often well up there. But it shouldn't be surprising given that nearly 33% of individuals in the UK are struggling. Does anyone know that apparently 8% of the UK struggle with a porn addiction? 8%? Have you ever spoken to anyone who's told you that ever? You think, you've got these 2 tables, one of you, right? But how would you ask that question seriously when you're remote in person? How would you speak to a manager? How would you speak to someone else? We want to create that psychologically safe place where people feel they can come and ask that question, and then we'll push them through the support they need regardless of where they are. You offer so much stuff to your businesses, right? Do people understand where they can just ask a question? See what I did there? You like that? Yeah? By doing this, by engaging earlier, that top of funnel, we can start to offset the average cost of that treatment by engaging earlier in the pathways. This is the National Institute of Clinical Excellence guidelines. So if you have a triage, you'll end up in one of these buckets, and often then you're suggested some type of intervention. We find actually at Bupa that a lot of people, when they come into that triage, they're suggested to go into therapy. But that isn't actually apt for 76% of the population who would probably benefit from some guided self-help or psychoeducation. What you got is Mark Antonio Spada, Professor of Addiction on the platform. So what we want to do is get people to ask him questions on the platform much earlier before potentially they need an outpatient treatment. Again, another amazing benefit that Bupa offer. But when you come on the platform, you ask the question, perhaps that's enough information, you're like, brilliant, you crack on with your day. Or perhaps you need something else, and then we'll push you into that service as well. So this is where the conversation starts. We're trying to make it engaging, flashy, take lessons from social media. We think of a Venn diagram, right? You've got two ways that people engage in content. Number one resource of mental health information is social media, one of the sites. Or you turn to reams of clinical information from the DSM or something else like that. We're trying to sit the Venn in between the two. We can't change how people consume content, we can change what they consume. We're trying to take the lessons from those platforms and deliver it, but it's clinically backed, safe, secure. So we offer all these amazing benefits. These are all some of the bespoke conversations that we filmed for Bupa colleagues in the UK. We filmed on cash plan, dental, all the other things that you see up there, and we've helped them to have a record utilization of cash plan internally. It's driven record utilization of dental by filming conversations on the subjects and essentially demystifying the complex and confusing world of benefits. What we've done with other clients is to increase the utilization of the on-site care. We've also increased the utilization of the menopause support somewhere else by filming conversations with other benefits providers. We want to complement, not compete. And by giving people this resource, we actually try and think through as well how we can engage them. So we work with people who are on the manufacturing floor, where there's QR codes integrated into pay slips. We're trying to be like the octopus into the business and make sure we've got various touch points so people get on the platform, they ask a question, and they go to where they need afterwards, regardless of their physical location. We integrate into Teams, Slack. We're just trying to be wherever people are in the moment they need it to begin that conversation a fraction earlier. Because when we do that, the outcomes for the business are vast. And for NatWest, we were proud to work with them while they actually reduced mental health absence by 6.9% for the first time in 7 years. Was it 100% us? I'd love to say it was. No. Did we give a voice to the subjects and the benefits? Absolutely. We contribute to the effort, and I'm really proud of doing so. So there's a little takeaway as well. If you think about connecting people in a hybrid world, you might have a 2-day-a-week, completely remote, completely in person. Have a think about how connected that workplace is, and you can potentially ask yourselves these questions. So on the left side, if people are completely disconnected, regardless of the physical location, the chances are you don't understand the needs of the people, or you're simply not serving them. If you're flexible, in the middle, right, completely flex, can we create some in-person moments to connect? Because at the end of the day, we're all hairless apes, right? Regardless of how productive you think you are being plugged in all day, you're not. We need time like this to come together. This is what it's all about. This is how you create that organizational stickiness while maximizing flexibility. Then the office. If we're right in the middle, how can we create more digital moments to try and augment and improve that flexibility, to open up the talent pools to populations that were previously not included? And then we're moving to that flexibility, that connected piece. How can we keep the flexibility, maximize the in-person? It's always about offsetting and trying to find that right balance, because regardless of how flexible the role is, there's always a need to come together at least a bit of the time. It's about finding that sweet spot. But then this will also depend on the role type. As an engineer, we'll need someone different to work on the factory floor to someone else. And often one-size-fits-all mandates, unfortunately, fit none, as all of our roles have different requirements of physical proximity and connection. We've got 2 minutes left. If you wanted to connect with me, I'd love to. That's my little QR code up the top. And also, if you want to just ask a question, please do. Got it in twice there. There you go. Just ask a question. Hopefully, we've got some. We've got 2 minutes. Let's get into it. Thanks.
Roll with
this way you clap, by the way.
Yeah.
There you go. I told you were going to get there, didn't I? Woo!
So I think someone's liked what they've seen and probably want to take it back to their organisation.
I'm round the corner, so come and.
Fantastic. Was it easy to find execs contributing to this? How did you convince them, and how much time did it take from them to do so?
It's never easy. We're fortunate. Lisa's in the room from Workday, who was an absolute amazing ambassador. So we find someone who really cares about the subject and wants to support, then they are a key enabler to getting the people on the platform. Often when someone's got emotional connection to the subject, they'll move heaven and earth to get the right people on. And once they can see, feel, understand the impact of what we've done with other clients, then they want to get on board. They need a mixture of emotion and the quantitative impact. Bring those two things together, and then you have a real conversation. And it's difficult for them to say no, really. They kind of have to. But it takes a bit of work, and you have to chameleon yourself depending on the exec you speak to. So I want to hear different things, right?
Fantastic. One more quickly.
Please.
How can we best address the challenges of office versus manufacturing employees who don't have the luxury of hybrid work? How can we still connect them to wellbeing?
That's the tough piece, isn't it? 'Cause then it feels like it's almost like inequitable, isn't it, when people have got more flexibility. But The roles we sign up for are different requirements. It's about understanding even the people that are more temporally restrained, they will still have moments or windows where they can engage in something like this. But we just have to think about that top of funnel. Where are their eyes during the day? Do they ever check in before their shift? They get their pay slips monthly. Can we put a QR code? Where do they get their comms? Coca-Cola recently sent a postcard to everyone for Mental Health Awareness Week, actually to the partner of the person who works in the factory, because they knew that would be better for engagement to help understand the family benefit. Take some creative thinking, often analog solutions for those groups to get them into the digital. Or analog entry points are better, but we have to get really creative, understanding where their eyes and attention are during the day. Because for digital workers, we often know it's Teams, Slack, your SharePoint, and a couple other bits and some email comms. But for in person, it's much, much harder. So we actually have to work harder to get them engaged into the digital benefits.
We're out of time, sadly. Please, round of applause.
Thank you.